Welcome back to the Upside of Authentic Leadership podcast. I'm really excited today to have one of my favorite speakers that we've had in my Vistage group this year, EOS implementer Beth Berman. I'm really excited to have her tell a little bit about her story and her experience with working with clients, implementing EOS, and all the follow-on work that they need to do to keep it up to date and manage it. So welcome, Beth. Really glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and always good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. So, of course, we like to kick things off just hearing a little bit about your story and how you became an EOS implementer.
Okay, so basically, I have always had entrepreneurship in my life, grew up in an entrepreneurial family, was pulled away, recruited out of college into corporate. So I did 13 years at CMP Telephone, AT&T, pre and post
Mm.
divestiture. And it took me 13 years to realize that corporate it was not in the cards for me. I was successful, but it really wasn't in my heart. So I did some facilitation in schools while my kids were young, and then ultimately joined the leadership team of a recruiting firm prior to 2008. And we were doing great. Loved recruiting, loved the marketing of the firm, helping grow the firm, all of that kind of stuff. And we were doing really, really well across the board recruiting through leadership and management positions, all kinds of industries. And then the market dropped. And so everyone remembers that loud crash. It dropped, and all of a sudden, everything in our business stopped. No one was looking to hire people. People were out looking for jobs. So I led the pivot to becoming a job search coaching firm. And we first stabilized and then grew the firm while others around us were not having that same success because they weren't having anyone knocking on their doors anymore. And ultimately weathered that crisis. And then after about 3 years, left, took all of the experiences that I'd had before and pulled them into a practice, my practice, which is called Compellications. It was a shortcut for compelling communications. And I learned it wasn't the most compelling email address to give over the phone, nor the name. I used to get introduced as Beth from Complications, which gave me a good opening to have some personality in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I started working with leadership teams, bringing together everything I'd learned around leadership, marketing, communications, team building, and was working with leadership teams on communicating why-based communications. If you're familiar with Simon Sinek's Start with
Mm-hmm.
Why, that approach, using that for team building, for marketing, and those kinds of things. Anyway, so I was doing that work and then eventually was hearing about EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, through my colleague who was in DC at the time, as I was, Jonathan Smith. And Jonathan Smith was one of the first ever implementers of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. He was leaving DC, wanted me to take over his practice, but I was really loving my work with the Wise, so I took a pass at that point. But then
Mm-hmm.
fast forward, my son was in New York, so Jonathan had moved there, and he was looking to make a change. He was COO of a company, and I introduced him to Jonathan. So Jonathan pulled him into EOS, and then they ultimately pulled me into EOS. And so I learned from one of the earliest implementers of EOS. And at the time, Mark O'Donnell, who's the current visionary leader of EOS worldwide, which has grown to just a really significant size at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I used to just sit in his sessions and watch him deliver sessions in the beginning. So it's kind of like one big happy family. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't visionary of EOS Worldwide at that time, just a smaller firm. But it's kind of like EOS is in my family, it's in my blood, it's what I love to do. I also run a peer group of leaders who are also looking to grow and become their best. So in both places, I'm really running with people who are improvement oriented, who put the work there, just like you. Um,
Mhm.
Really being in that sweet spot of leaders who want to get better and will work at it. And I think you'll agree it's an amazing place to be, especially at this stage of life, just helping people get what they want.
Right, right. And I find I improve as well, just being in that environment and feeling that energy. You can't help but look in the mirror sometimes and go, wow, okay, that's, yeah, good, good.
Yeah,
A lifelong learner and always trying to
exactly.
grow.
Exactly.
So, so you mentioned your son. Is he working with you in your firm, or does he have his own?
So we are both independent franchisees of EOS worldwide, meaning that we run our own practices. We have microsites on the EOS worldwide website, but we do collaborate from time to time, and we have a cross mentorship uh, arrangement and just habit of helping each other when we have questions or opportunities. It's just we're on the same team, but formally we have separate businesses. He also has a marketing and operations business that kind of supports and helps people actually implement the processes around EOS. So we're pretty synergistic,
Mhm.
and it's been the best thing for our relationship as a mom and a son. It's been a beautiful thing. We have a separate language.
Wow, I was gonna you preempted my question. I was gonna ask you how does that play out in your relationship? And you just it was played out well. That's awesome.
It's real. It's brought us so close. And the EOS is a system designed for primarily for businesses, but we actually run it in our families to differing degrees as well. And
Wow.
it's pretty amazing stuff.
Guys, yeah, just have your rocks and your yeah, wow, that's
Talks and meetings to get together on priorities, make sure we're on track, all of those kinds of things, and really set a vision for what we want in life. So it's been very
of
powerful
course.
for
That's awesome. So what is the your favorite part of what you do of your job?
us. My favorite part is, and it really goes back to the why. It's watching the impact on my team leaders, um, really seeing the light bulbs go off, watching them progress, get to where
Hmm.
they want, and there's a starting point when a company or a leadership team is starting with EOS, as same as in a peer group. They're coming to you and they have this kind of line in the sand before
Hmm.
before engaging and then after, and watching their progress and seeing their excitement as they start to see the tools of EOS mesh together and
Hmm.
and support each other and help them get, through a meeting structure that helps them get stuff done and surface issues early. And they have goals that actually are getting them to the end result, which has finally been stated clearly. So they actually are all pulling together in the same direction. And knowing that there's that impact on the team leaders and then their people and that the people they go home to, because people are happier, people are more relaxed, people are, even though they're working hard and they're motivated and they're churning and doing this great work,
Hmm.
things are happening. It's not just like doing it for naught. And so it's pretty exciting stuff. And I think you can see just by my reaction, I
Yeah,
really do
your
love
energy.
that impact. It's pretty exciting for me. And
Yeah, no,
helping them get real and have the conversations they've never had, super powerful.
yeah, that's the hard questions, right? The elephant in the room that hasn't been addressed.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, what? Tell me about a memory of a your best memory, if you can come up with that, of a good, successful implementation, and then what are the key factors that made it successful?
So one of well, I'll start with the key factors and then
Mhm.
I'll tell you a story about it. So first of all, what helps EOS teams running on EOS get what they want from their business, first of all, is they've got to get real. So this being open and honest, working and communicating from a place of objectivity, moving toward the greater good of the company, letting go of ego, letting go of emotion and all that, politics and miscommunications and guardedness and protecting their zone, all that kind of stuff goes away. So when they get to be open, honest, and real, and have the real conversations that they need to have, that's where I see great success in my companies. Also, one of the key factors for success in EOS is, we're only as good as our people. And
Mhm.
so making the people changes to put the right people in the right seats. It's not just language, there are tools to make that happen and ways
Mhm.
to make objective decisions around that. But when people make those changes, that's when things get so much better. I've never heard a client say, gee, I should have made that, I should have waited longer to make that change. They're always happy. It always reverberates in a positive way. And the people themselves end up being happier and more successful, even if they end up somewhere else outside of the
Mhm.
company. And also for the success of EOS, what is really important is for, to keep the cadence going, to have the meetings, work with the tools, show up fully, and really, there's a weekly meeting called the Level 10 in EOS, and it's and this applies to anyone in any meeting, really. It's the idea of disconnecting, separating from your technology, even if you're on Zoom, staying focused and making sure that you're using your most expensive time. If you think about leaders being in a virtual or physical room together,
Mhm.
getting being totally focused and not allowing distractions to come in, and using that most expensive time to get the right things discussed, done, and all of that. So those are what I would say are the three main things. Trust the process, all that kind of stuff. Just make it happen and be fully present and get real. One of my favorite stories is about a client, and it is an optometry company, multi-location optometry company. And I like to use this story because it really does show the impact on leaders. So she was running her company, initially had several locations. They were all successful. They were all kind of ticking along, but
Mhm.
no major growth was happening. And this visionary is really what I would call a mega visionary, always wanting more, like always wanting to learn more, get more, do more, get more now.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, it was a matter of really having sessions and helping her discover that what she thought was a leadership team were her leadership team members were not even they were not leaders.
Mhm.
So out of five leaders who started in this practice as running on EOS and actually being the leadership team, only one of them actually remained, and everyone else who's there now has been added to the team deliberately around where they wanted to take the company, what kind of people they needed. So they have a strong visionary, a strong number two, the integrator, who actually make sure that the company's running in a direction where they're delivering and moving towards that vision that
Mhm.
they've created. So originally the business is ticking and everybody's, doing well, happy. Some people along the way felt like, do we really need these changes? They weren't necessarily the leaders. The transformation in this company where
Mhm.
everyone is pulling together.
Mhm.
They are aligned on what they want on their priorities each week, each quarter. They're moving towards executing on everything that they had planned toward. Their growth rate is, they're growing now at about 18% a year. But that's not even the biggest piece. The biggest piece is the visionary had two things happen through this process. One is that she discovered she no longer wanted to be in the business, delivering even the optometry services, being in the leadership position in the business. She wanted to be leadership, but not really in the day-to-day.
Mm-hmm.
True passion was she wanted to open a med spa. And so what EOS enabled her to do was to delegate down all of the things that were not in her highest and best use, as Dan Sullivan would say, not in her unique ability. So she delegated it down. Her integrator and leadership team are running her optometry businesses. She's opened a med spa. She's thrilled. She's doing work that she loves and that she's great at. And so this is something that often happens with EOS is yes, you hit your goals. Yes, you deliver, you execute on your vision. But often what we find out with EOS is that you actually get to do what you love. And the largest impact of EOS is on the life of leaders. They get the balance they want. They get the to be doing and acting in a way that they want to and get out of the things that don't bring them joy and fulfillment and so on and so forth. And then the other piece is not really as a result of EOS, but what happens when a team is fully ticking on EOS. And that is that this visionary also contracted cancer this year. And she was able to focus totally on her care and not be worried about the business, mired in the business, involved in the business, but she was able to check out for months at a time and then slowly come back as she recovered and had the strength for it. I mean, what could be better? That's affecting someone's life, someone's livelihood, making sure the business keeps going and growing and everything else. So when you've got people who are following the process and are really willing to get real and look at their people and their processes and all these different aspects of their business and fine tune them and be open and honest about what the right things are for that business, the results are, that's a rather small business result. You see it in all size businesses. I have companies in the hundreds of millions where they see, all of a sudden they've got scale or they're finding money. It's just, Gino Wickman, the founder of EOS, to my mind, is a genius at simplification.
That's a great story. You're talking about really not just running a business well, but having the ability to step back when you need to and focus on things that are obviously more important, healing and getting well, and not having to try to juggle all these things and get stressed out. So yeah, that's it's transformational. So on the flip side, where it hasn't maybe hasn't worked, I guess what are the things that have gotten in the way of a business succeeding with what are the main things? You probably have it's one or two things or maybe three that
So it's kind of like the converse of what we just talked about. So I'll give an example. So I worked with a team. It was a government contractor in the DC area, and there was a leader in this team who, how I said we need to let go of ego and be open and honest, who couldn't let go of ego, who refused to accept any imperfection about herself, who refused to acknowledge when she needed help, who refused to do anything that would threaten her self-image by getting real, by acknowledging that she wasn't perfect. So very much a perfectionist. And therefore, the communications with the team, even on our first day, they didn't flow because
Mm-hmm.
people could not talk to her. She also wouldn't let go of the reins. I want you to take over, but wouldn't let people take over. So people who refuse to delegate, people who won't get open and honest, and also teams that won't make the key decisions, especially around changes,
Mm-hmm.
people changes. We call it the accountability chart, making sure right people are in the right seats, they're doing what they love, they are they're excellent at their jobs. And so when you have that, but you know that that's the situation, that they're not excellent at their jobs, they're not in the right seat, or maybe they don't fit the company, they're not fitting the core values of the company, or they're not even the right people on the bus. But yet
Mm-hmm.
we keep them and keep them and keep them because of an old relationship, or because we're fear of change, or because we feel we owe it to people. We owe it to people to help them become their best. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's not in that place or in that seat, then we're not helping them. So it's those kinds of things, as opposed to, when you do have open, honest conversation. And, I've had comments from leadership teams. This is the first time we've ever really talked to each other. Like, it's imagine years of running a
Mm-hmm.
business where they really don't communicate. So it's letting go. It's letting go of ego. And when people don't do that, or they won't make the people decisions, or they're holding on to their own sense of power and
Mm-hmm.
not working for the greater good of the company, it's not going to work.
So the kind of the last question here about if you're a CEO or business owner and you hear this presentation, this podcast, and wow, they've I'm sure heard of EOS. It's like, what is the, before you do go to some conference or a workshop, you do the prep work, right? What would be like the questions they need to be asking themselves and kind of getting, am I, or probably you would ask them as an implementer to make sure that they're, set up for success and not for failure. Yeah, what would you say to a CEO or an owner who's thinking they want to implement EOS?
So, first of all, I would say to them, let's make sure that even if you feel you want to implement it, we have to make sure your whole team, the people who are on your team now, who you think are the future key strategic leaders of your firm, your company, that they're going to buy in as well. So, for that reason, we would have a 90-minute meeting, an initial meeting, which is an investment of our time and their time. It's complimentary. And
Mhm.
and what we would be asking is, where do you want to take this business? What's getting in your way? Um, who are, in fact, the key leaders, strategic, leaders who are going to take your business forward? What kinds
Mhm.
of issues are you having around, are you all aligned on your vision? Do you even know where you're going?
Mhm.
What are, what are the issues around people? What are these kinds of things? Explaining that, does that come to you? Does this feel familiar, these people issues that we're describing? Do you have the right pulse on your business in terms of having data, early data, letting you know leading and lagging indicators that are going to help you smoke out issues? Will you create a culture? Do you have a culture where you'll let issues come forward without shooting the messenger? Are you willing to do that? To be willing to have those issues and then solve them in such a way that you make them go away forever? um, Mostly when we get to the process piece and we're describing that, most businesses we come to, either they are over processed, there's so much process that they're putting people in straitjackets,
Mhm.
or they're or no process and everything's a one-off and willy-nilly, and they may be successful, but it's just not scalable or sustainable. And then finally, are you willing to, will you have the discipline to have a weekly meeting and sessions over time that will get you where you want to go? And most of all, what we're looking for in that meeting is, are you willing to be open and honest? Are you willing to get real? If in that meeting, a client is not, they're not willing to have those conversations, if they're shutting down their people, their other leaders in the conversation and not allowing them to be open and honest, that's not going to be a great thing. It's not going to
Yeah.
be something for them. So the questions are you ready? Do you want this more than I want it for you? Because I want it for them, because I know it's the medicine. If they'll do the work,
Hmm.
it's absolutely the medicine to get them where they want to be, whether it's
Hmm.
scale, profit, a med spa, whatever it is. Um, do you want it more than I want it for you? Are you really going to be able to commit to a system and a process that's, I make hard work fun, but there's still a process, there's still stuff to do.
Right.
And are you willing to be open and honest?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
really it. Do you want growth? Are you, as you said, are you a learner? Are you a continuous learner who wants to become your best? You have people, or are you willing to get people on your team who are willing to become your best?
Yeah. You made me think of Brene Brown talks about, I don't want to be right. I want to get it right.
Yes.
Right. Let
Yeah.
go of the control and having to be right. That's great. So then the role of an implementer, and then your role, how important is that, and having an implementer help work with you in implementing EOS?
So first of all the tools in EOS, it's all open source, they're all downloadable, so companies can do it themselves. If they want to get there better, faster, stronger, then the role of an EOS implementer and I'm a certified EOS implementer, there are different levels. The role of an EOS implementer is to be teacher, facilitator, and coach. And what that means is that we teach them the system. We facilitate the conversations that they need to have, that they might be holding back on. So we are facilitating those conversations, helping the words come out that they may have been holding back, facilitating conversations to make sure we're all on the same page with even what the issue is and what we're aiming to solve and resolve and get to, those kinds of things. And then really coaching them to become their best,
Hmm.
individually, through the facilitation, setting expectations around what does a great leader in this company look like? What does great leadership and management look like? We call it LMA, leadership plus management leads to
Hmm.
accountability. Can't make someone become accountable, but you can
Right.
execute on some behaviors and practices that will help you allow your people to become accountable.
Yeah. Well, and I was as you're talking, I can imagine. I've done some group therapy in my life. I feel like it probably at some point you kind of are facilitating some group therapy.
To an extent, but it's really not just therapy. It's more toward action,
Hmm.
results,
Right.
alignment, those kinds of things. And the results that you can have from EOS, I have companies who've sold to private equity, people who,
Hmm.
in addition to the optometrist with the med spa, who've elevated out of their businesses and started other businesses, and
Yeah.
so
Right.
it's just, found lost cash flow, found
Hmm.
new opportunities. I've
Hmm.
focused on their core business so that instead of being in multiple areas of their business, they went to where their highest and best use was as a company, and profit soared. So like
Wow. Yeah.
it's
Yeah. No. Well, and it's not really group therapy, but having a third party there to help sort of facilitate conversations, and you kind of reading the body language and, hey, tell me more,
absolute.
as you want to say something, I feel, so you are able to pull things out of people and sort of have some boundaries, and so it's not dominated by the type A personalities and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. There are definitely techniques for that. Why the look? Why we haven't
yeah,
heard from you? Someone
yeah,
besides this person, give us your feedback. There's so
yeah.
much that can happen with the aid of a facilitator that will not happen otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I've done some implementations of other programs, and in my experience, unless you're really healthy, a really healthy and open and honest company, you really do need a little, yeah, some help, just to help enable and facilitate those conversations, so you get to the right place and you don't stop short and sort of leave with a lot of unfinished business and that sort of thing.
Exactly. And even those companies that we start out with who are relatively open and honest, there's always more to go. And
Mhm.
it's really when you can take a team that's already oriented that way and get them really aligned toward a common vision, toward a common set of goals, rather than every person on the leadership team having a different picture. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for taking 30 minutes and just spending time with me on the podcast talking about EOS. And I can just say your energy and your vibe is very glowing. It's like you're talking about a child or something, and not a a job. So that's great. I'm glad that you found EOS and your son too. So thanks and have a great day.
My pleasure, Mickey. Always good to see you. And
Uh,
thank you for hosting.
yeah. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on the upside of authentic leadership.